Hey, top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency TV. Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Just had a couple of great segments with Adam McClintock. You can go back and catch those on the podcast after the show. That's Spotify, that's Apple, that's Google, Amazon. We are talking to a whole bunch of people on the back end of the show, waiting on Mike Schaefer to join. But before we get to him, let's tell you about the rest of the lineup. Malcolm Butler, co-publisher of the Lincoln Parish Journal and voice of Louisiana Tech at 8:45. Then Mike Sauter at 9 o'clock. He's the high school sports insider for Hurrdat Sports. I think we're still talking to Mike Sauter, right?
Yeah. It is official. Mike Sauter has not been to bed.
Diane Mendenhall, president of Nebraska Pro Volleyball at 9:30, and then Matt Verzal to close things out at 9:45. Before we move forward, I also want to take a moment, tell you about the Omaha Storm Chasers. Baseball's back. The All-Star break is over. Baseball is back, and you can check out the Storm Chasers in action this weekend against Indianapolis. I was wrong for a good majority of this week, DB, thinking that Indianapolis was the Reds. I got them mixed up with the Bats. Indianapolis.
I probably was in agreement. I don't know.
Indianapolis is the Pirates. So I'm not saying Paul Skeens is going to be in AAA this weekend, but who knows?
He'll be on the fast track, whatever.
Yeah, maybe you'll see if he's not up in the league by the time playoffs roll around. Indianapolis is back in Storm Chaser country. Back in, I think, September. Yeah. You can probably find him there.
Do we have Schaefer?
We did.
Yeah, speaking of being back.
Welcome in now. Let's welcome in Mike Schaefer. There he is.
How we doing?
Mike J. What's up, buddy?
Nebraska Football and Recruiting for 24/7 Sports. Mike J. Schaefer, as DB likes to call him. Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Schaefer,
everyone doing well? Everyone having a good Friday morning? You guys have your long sleeves on, so you're prepared for this cold 70-degree weather?
Yes, we are. Mm-hmm. Yep. Just making sure.
Do I detect a note of sarcasm?
No. I mean, you got to be careful out there when it gets into the 70s.
It gets a little nippy.
Oh, that's tough. Oh, Mike J starts with jokes. Mike, let me ask you something real quick, because this is important. Inquiring minds want to know. Was the double stack burger that you sent me the picture of as good as it looked in the photo? That thing looked restaurant worthy, and I'm kind of a tough critic.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. So it was just the smash burger, but I didn't flatten it as much as I have in the past. So you let it kind of sit up a little bit more. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I know you hate this cheese, but those Kraft singles melt, and they just look incredible because of it. Like that's why it looked good.
You can't do that, Schaefer. Like, it came out of a plastic wrapper.
That is the American way, though. Put Kraft single on the burger.
I'm just telling you, it's why it looks as photogenic as it does. That cheese melts in like an incredible fashion.
It
probably
looks,
because it's not really cheese, but that's not the real conversation to have, I suppose.
But buried in the lead, though, your potatoes have come a long. You've mastered the fresh potato thing, right? Because it's hard. I think I gave you that idea, and I did say it's hard to hold like the crispness.
Yeah, so they weren't
like
as crisp though. They
really?
were nice and charred and everything, and they looked good. But then both Shelby and I were a little disappointed in how crisp they were.
It's tough.
Well, I don't know. We were given some ideas. Use some starch or flour,
cornstarch.
Some people even like bake them before they throw them on the griddle to kind of help with that too. So I don't know. We'll keep working on that. But the hash browns have become pretty good at this point. Like I'm fairly comfortable with those. The circular potatoes, they're a little bit trickier, like just trying to line that up. And then the difficult thing is you're always trying to time everything to come out at the same time, so it's all still hot. And like that's the part of like restaurants that is always impressive, because trying to do this on your own is, courting disaster in some ways.
How good a command do you feel like you have of your hot spots?
Of the griddle, like where the pretty good. I mean, those things get so hot, like you can you can get the whole thing up to like over 600 degrees. And so I feel like there's the left two burners are the ones where the hamburger patties always end up, or whatever Philly cheesesteaks, whatever we're doing. Like the meat is always on the left two sides. The potato seems to be in that third burner. And then the right burner, because I think it's closest to where the wind can come in at, and I have the less control over how high I can get that temperature. That's like where the buns get toasted or vegetables get sauteed or whatever. So I do kind of have a system down without even realizing I have a system. So I appreciate you for making me think about that.
Chef Boyardee Schaefer.
Well, know your way, right?
Man.
Know
because
how
everybody will tell you that's kind of the key to mastering the Blackstone is understanding your zones.
That's the key to mastering anything.
Yeah, and that and seasoning. How often are you seasoning that thing?
I haven't done another run of seasoning on it, but I've started doing the putting the coat of oil at the very end of
the
cleaning.
spatula to smear.
Yeah, I mean, I just started doing that. We already have so much good flavor, but I think from what everyone says, it kind of helps prevent some cracking of the griddle a little bit, and so it's like the best thing you can do after you clean it. There's like a million ways to clean the thing, apparently, but like the thing you should do when you think you're done cleaning it is just get a little oil on there, spread it around, burn it out, and call it good until the next one.
I know. Sorry, are the recruiting beatniks? They're like, you guys just spent 6 minutes talking food. I mean, listen, it's the summer and it's shape. We like to have a little fun.
There's not a whole lot happening in recruiting, so
no, it's not. It is July, right?
Yeah. That's what they say. I mean, I've been playing golf, so that's what I care about.
Coach Rule reminded me he is back full time on the 25th. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink for DB. When you look at what could happen at the end of July, what's going into fall camp, where did you slot Big Ten Media Days for Nebraska's relative importance in the landscape of the Big Ten?
Like just Nebraska's
Yeah.
appearance. Well, so I mean, your top three, without question, are Ohio State, Michigan, and Francis McGillicuddy talking about Big Ten programming. So I mean, nothing can pass up those important things. And then from there, it's pretty much an open ball game. I don't think Nebraska is interesting to the Big Ten media at large. But I think Matt Rule will be. And so Matt Rule will cause a lot of columns to be written about Nebraska from outside media people because he's going to come off interesting in that setting. And that in itself would sort of help rehabilitate a Nebraska program where you had a couple years of Mike Riley, but largely you had two coaches that aren't particularly fond of any media setting to begin with, and Frost and Pelini. I mean, we had the whole opening statement gate last year with Scott Frost. So I think having a coach who seems like he's comfortable in that environment, who's going to try to use it to get some messages across, and I think Nebraska's starting over again. All of those things are going to make them more interesting this year than they probably have been the last couple to the outside media. I mean, certainly the whole thing of media days, though, I mean, 90% of the questions get asked by the people who can show up at practice anyways. So it's just kind of I don't understand why this is still a thing that happens. I mean, you could do this over a Zoom, and the people who really want to hear what Mike Loxley has to say about Maryland don't have to go to Indianapolis to do that. So I question why media days are that important anymore. I really do.
Let me ask you, and you kind of did the quick version of some of the interesting things that have happened to Nebraska heading into media days, right? Remember a couple of years ago, it was Bill Moose came out ahead of time and he used the number 6, and that kind of dominated Big Ten media. As well, your athletic director said 6, and that seems low. And then you mentioned the opening statement gate and who Coach Riley brought and who didn't, and why he played second fiddle. Bo didn't enjoy it. But with Rule, even if you get outside the whole Rule-Aid thing, you can't help but to come away in settings like this, do you think, feeling better about Nebraska than you do just simply because of Rule's character traits, right?
Well, he's a good speaker.
It's almost inevitable.
Yeah, he's a good speaker, and I mean, he
loves the program.
I don't know if this is trademarked. I assume it is. He's a football guy. Like, and football people like listening to him talk. I mean, he talks at all of these other clinics and conferences and coaches conventions and everything else. And the reason for that isn't just that he has a bunch of hot air. It's because he's good at discussing football with people that like to talk football. And I think he's going to be good at crafting, a narrative that some people are going to follow down for their column or whatever about what they think Nebraska is going to be. I think he's mastered the art of being able to say a lot of words without giving away too much, but also making it feel like you've learned something. So I just think he's really good in that setting. And I think that is going to kind of reinvigorate interest in a program that largely other teams aren't that interested in. Other programs aren't that interested in Nebraska. They've been bad. I mean, obviously around here, it's everything, but to everywhere else, it's kind of a joke. And that's going to be a big part of what Matt Rule has to fight against, both in terms of Big Ten media days, but also, they got to go win games. They got to give people a reason for them to matter. If Big Ten media days are still going to be a thing, you want it to matter if Nebraska's up there talking beyond the local media market.
Are Big Ten media days a place you want a quarterback to be at? You would want your quarterback to be at? Not just Big Ten media days. I should just say media days in general.
Yeah, I think in general, yes. I mean, I always like the idea of the traditional, your quarterback's one of your leaders, one of your vocal guys, one of the people that, sort of sets a tone for how your team should be received. It's difficult, though, because this environment, sometimes you just want people who are going to represent your program really well, or guys that can sort of show off different facets of your program, or, sometimes you just want to reward somebody who had a great offseason. And they put themselves in position that they deserve to have this trip to Indianapolis and, getting to talk in front of people and everything else. And some people are more comfortable with this than others. So I think a lot of it is you have to match up the personality for what kind of message you want to get across. Certainly you want people that aren't going to say anything that's going to blow back on you. But yeah, I mean, if given a choice and you have a guy that you're comfortable with, I'd always want to have a quarterback there. I just think it's a mindset that I have. It's not a necessity, but it's just something that I think that makes sense.
Do you kind of chuckle how the Big Ten is notorious for not always bringing their thoroughbreds to Big Ten media days in terms of their iconic players?
I don't know what you're talking about. It's not like Penn State's notorious for bringing punters or, guys that aren't even going to win the all Big Ten punter award or whatever it is. Not even a first team punter. We're just getting the punter. Thanks, James Franklin. You leave Saquon Barkley at home. Nobody had any questions for Saquon. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's gamesmanship. I don't know, again, if people aren't comfortable, in that environment. I don't know if they just don't want someone to talk to their star players. To me, it seems like a disservice, but again, you get 3, and however you choose to attack it sometimes says more about the head guy than it does anything else.
Apparently, I'm in the minority, but my level of surprise in terms of participants at Big Ten Media Days appears to be just the opposite of everybody else. I most understood Piper. I was probably the most surprised by Reimer, and Sims was somewhere in the middle. Let me guess, that's not your order either in terms of...
No, I think that's fair. I mean, Ethan Piper is that's still one of the best interviews I can remember from the spring. I mean, he had the most to say about how it felt to be a kid that grew up around Nebraska football, and then you get there, and then the magic is kind of gone for you, and you're supposed to kind of work through this in an environment where you don't feel like it's a team. You don't feel like it's cohesive. I mean, he had some really, I thought, eye-opening quotes about what it was like in the final season. And so I also think he's a guy that they're rewarding because he had a great offseason. I think he's a guy that everybody's like, oh, he's not going to be a starting offensive lineman.
Remember when he was the guy that was dunking and jumping 30-some inches? And
I mean,
he's a good athlete.
He's one of those players that people feel like the book has been written on and they don't need to see the final chapter. And I just think that's unfair. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ethan Piper's a starter or if they have 6 guys and they end up rotating someone in. But I think he's one of their linemen. They like him a lot. Luke Reimer surprises me because he doesn't always seem as comfortable in the interview setting.
Yep.
And so
especially as the ambassador type. Like he came
Right.
a long way this spring. He surprised me the most, but everybody looks at me like I'm crazy. Like, duh, he's a no-brainer. I was like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't see that. I mean,
I think he
I
possesses a
guess,
lot of the traits, though, that Schaefer was talking about when talking quarterbacks.
Yeah,
like,
I don't
hey, I'm
know.
rewarding somebody this offseason that was working hard. And,
yeah.
like, if you're looking at it from that perspective, I think Reimer fits the bill.
Right. Well, and then the other thing is I think you always want to have at least um one guy that can represent your in-state in Nebraska. You have at least one player on each side of the ball. I think there's some other stuff that goes into it. And so maybe you chose Reimer over Quentin Newsome or Ty Robinson. I don't know who the other person that you would bring. And then the interesting thing with Jeff Sims is that it's a guy that has never actually started a game for you. I mean, they did that with Tanner Lee, I think, and it was kind of like a weird deal. I don't remember if Frost did it with Adrian Martinez too.
Well,
But it's just
remember
sort of
all the scuttlebutt then is that you're bringing a pup,
yeah.
right? Remember
Well,
that? And then by year 3, we were tired of him coming. So like, you can't win for losing.
hey, you got to speak for yourself. I wasn't. I was good with Adrian being there.
They speak for
What are you
yourself.
doing?
Well, I just felt like the fan base was so cynical because it had turned into he's always going to say the right things.
Yeah, it's really weird how a guy who largely, you could ask him questions and he was going to give you answers. Then it becomes like, oh, we're not getting deep enough with him or whatever. I mean, sometimes you think that fans want these guys to like lay down on the couch and it's a psychoanalysis that's supposed to be broadcast for the entire world. When really all you want to know is why he decided to throw that slant route instead of going with the one-on-one over the top. So it's kind of funny, like what the expectation of what you're supposed to get out of interviews is for some people, because you'd think for some of it's supposed to be, more of why this and not that, and for others it's like, let's get on the couch. What was your relationship like with your mom when you were 4? Like but that tells you just how big the fan base is, that you're getting both sides of that all the time.
Okay, so speaking of the fan base here, 50 days away, less than 50 days now until kickoff.
48 I saw this morning.
Yeah, and I know a lot of Nebraska.
Jamie Burrow.
It may not seem like it because I've been here for such a short time, but I do know a good amount of Nebraska fans that are still skeptical about how things will go. And they're prone to hitting the panic button too, which always has me shaking my head a little bit. Rash reactions, things like that. My question to you, Schaefer, is this. In year 1 of a new head coach, should you ever hit the panic button during the season, or should year 1 be looked at as a freebie?
Oh, no, there's no freebies in college football. If there was, you wouldn't see coaches fired after their first or second year now. And that's become almost, I wouldn't say common, but way more common than it ever should be, because it takes years to sort of put your stamp on something. So the idea that a guy, and what was it, Willie Taggart got 1 year at Florida State or something like that. I mean,
he may have had 2.
I mean, it's just one of those things where some people are going to do it. I don't think you should, but it's hard to know, right? Like, so we've never seen a Matt Rule team at Nebraska. What if they come out and they average like 16 points a game for the first 6 games of the year? What if they come out and they're giving up 40 points a game for the first 6 games? So, without knowing how it's going to look like, it's hard to know what would incite the panic, but it's not like it takes that much to incite panic. So if they lose to Colorado, people are going to be slamming that panic button. They're going to be throwing it at you guys through their computer screens. So, it's all going to depend on sort of how it plays out. But me personally, no. I mean, I think this year you have to allow for things to work themselves through, because it's not a finished product. It's nowhere near a finished product. There's a lot of trial and error in here. There's a lot of players that haven't really played as much meaningful football as what we'd want to believe. Like, there's people that talk about how MJ Sherman could be an all-conference player. He's not played a lot of football. Chief Borders hasn't played a lot of football. Corey Collier hasn't played a lot of football. Like, these transfer portal guys, because they come from these schools, the expectation is that they're just going to step right in and it's Big Ten and they're going to do well. They gotta prove it. They got to go out there and earn those snaps. They got to earn every rep they're going to get in the next game, in the first game. And so with that, there's a lot of openings for things to go wrong. And I think people have to acknowledge that even if they start out hot, like let's say they start 4-0, they could still hit something, a bump in the road that causes them to go from 4-0 to 4-2 to 5-3 to whatever. Like, you just have to be able to ride the roller coaster with this team. And it's easier to say than it is to do. But the reality is you're getting yourself into that chair and then we're slowly lurching up and we don't know what's on the other side of that drop. We have no idea. And you just have to acknowledge that, especially in the first year, it's going to be, it's going to be completely unknowable. It absolutely is.
Your sarcasm across all levels makes you one of the perfect people to ask for this. From a recruiting standpoint, like in-state, the media relationship, the fan base, where Nebraska is in their tenure. If I'm going to try to peg a budding romance, who has, and now keep in mind, you know what you know about the second half of this question, but who would had more potential for a torrid love affair? Was it the combination of Bill Moose and Scott Frost, or is it Trev Alberts and Matt Rule? If they have success.
Well, I mean, people were pretty far over their skis for Bill Moose and Scott Frost. I mean, there was more than enough people in the media.
It's the anti-Northwestern, right?
Yeah.
Frost antics were Bill Moose's fault, and Northwestern, like, oh man, what are we supposed to do with Pat Fitzgerald?
I would argue that Bill Moose's antics were Bill Moose's own fault, but that's a different conversation for a different day.
If he wasn't so hands off. Oh, God.
I mean, if he was in the state for half of his first, couple years of his tenure, that'd probably help too, but that's a different conversation. No,
because that's on the heels of me saying if Nebraska goes 2-0, just 2-0, Schaefer, it seems like we're ready to just be over the moon.
If they win that game against Minnesota, what do you think Friday's going to be like around here? People are going to go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
They're absolutely going to go nuts. And some of that is Nebraska hasn't beaten Minnesota a while. Some of that is Nebraska's an 8-point underdog. Some of that is it's a win against a team on the road. They're 1-0 for the first time since 2019. I mean, so there's a lot that kind of goes into it.
That is crazy.
Yeah. When you say that out loud, it just hits like it is a total slap in the face. Absolute slap in the face. 1-0 for the first time since 2019. And those losses, Ohio State, okay, you can acknowledge that one. Illinois and their odd even front that nobody could understand, and Northwestern with the onside kick. Those are your 3 0-1 starts. So that was fun to revisit.
I am going to miss the days of a press conference on Monday and something completely different being said by Tuesday or Thursday in the next one.
No. Yeah,
you remember those days, Shave?
I do.
Wait a minute. We practiced against an even front. We practiced a fair amount, huh?
I would venture to say that the Matt Rule team will probably be more coordinated in media effort than the previous regime would have been. Just kind of throwing that out there. I also wouldn't look for the head coach to be at odds with his offensive coordinator at the first press conference after the first game either. I wouldn't look for that.
Yeah, remember that? Hey, just we need to think together. We need to come together. We need to think as a team.
That was so embarrassing. And then there was people that were like, oh, well, what do you want him to say? And it's like, well, I don't want him to throw the guy that he hired that he told everyone that this was going to fix everything. I'd rather not see that person thrown under the bus after the first game.
5-0 season, 4 years. Some say 6. Be interesting.
Mike Schaefer, appreciate you, man.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Jay.
We'll be back.